Hi, this is why I've decided to leave the UK for a second time. Even the ducks agree. But this time it's going to be over 50. So I know that's a bigger deal, and you can imagine, but I'm here to share my reasons, or some of them, why I've decided to leave the UK and probably won't be coming back a second time. Hiya, I'm Steffi from across the pond and back, and I'm here to share in this beautiful place, one of my favourite places around. In actual fact, I wanted to point out two things before we start. First of all, I did try out a microphone out here just to see if it would improve things. Actually, I prefer the natural. Please let me know if you think it would be better with microphone, but I love these sounds. I love the natural sounds here. This is partly why I come here, to enjoy the natural sounds and sights, and yes, the duck noises. So if they annoy you, I'm sorry, but it's part of the area around here. Second thing to point out is that what we see here, this beautiful sunny day with just a few clouds in the sky, you see, he agrees with me still, and the aspect here with the beautiful, just the pond and the wildlife, and even people here walking around are generally more relaxed because they're walking around, you know, they're not working, they're not in a car at a traffic light, they're not waiting in a NHS waiting room. They're here on a almost like an alter reality, if that makes sense, because this isn't the normal life in Britain. This is the picture of more of the idyllic life that you would imagine in England. And yes, we do have lovely sunny days like this. We do have opportunities to go out and enjoy the countryside if you can get to the countryside. But there's so many aspects to life in England that have been totally changed and not altogether for the better, as a lot of people know. So just to say, oh, let's just jump in a car and go to the countryside, that may be a possibility for people, but for some other people it's really not an opportunity. So anyway, that's I digress. So I just want to share a few of the main reasons why I've decided to make the move to leave the UK again, and gotta go. All right, so here we are with some reasons. So number one, I think it's important as we get into our 50s and 60s and beyond, we need to be a little bit more thinking about ourselves. Some people are doing that more than others, but if you've led a life being a wife, mother, maybe caregiver to your husband and wife, to your children, possibly to friends, to your mother, father, elderly people in your family, you will know what I mean when I say that, especially women, I would say, but men as well, mainly women, that kind of living can have its toll on you. Now, you may serve and love and care for people in your family and children, of course. When they're young, you just give so much to your children. You give so many hours and devoted to taking them to school, activities and so on. And then as they get older, your responsibilities might lie with your husband, wife, or elderly parents. But my drift here is that all of those years that we've spent doing that, while hopefully enjoying some life as well, but that underlining kind of life is all mainly for other people. So when we get to a point of getting into our 50s and 60s, we really need to think more about ourselves too. Doesn't mean that we just stop thinking about others, of course, but my thinking is, right now I need to start really thinking about what I'm wanting my life to look like from here on out. So while it might look a bit idyllic around here, which it is in this particular area, but this is not real life. So real life is getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning or earlier. For many parents, taking their children to school in the dark, in the cold, dark mornings of the what seems like an endless English winter. So all of these little aspects, I could rabbit on about that, but I'm not going to, because I just want to stay focused on the main reasons why I personally am deciding to leave the UK. So those of you who have maybe watched some other videos of mine on Across the Pond and Back, you'll know a couple of things. So you'll know that I went to live in the USA. The first time was in my 30s, and I was willing. Wasn't being taken captive or anything like that. I was quite reluctant to leave the UK at that point, because I was very much an English girl, but I was a willing participant, so to speak. So off I went for 18 years, and some of those years were happier than others. And to start with, did have quite a lot of homesickness, which I've shared with you guys in other videos, but suffice it to say that I just see now, after having been away for 18 years, I've been commenting on the differences and the sometimes stark difference or lack of things that used to be here in England are not here anymore, or they're really reduced. And so things like friendliness, good customer service, I mean, even eating out is just so expensive that not too many people can afford to do that regularly unless they have a higher paying job or a partner who's also earning. I'm a widow now, so you'll see that from possibly a couple of videos, that at the moment I'm a single person who's paying the bills. So, which thank God I'm doing okay, but that's not everyone's story. And it's hard work, because you're almost always working to pay your bills. So I want this video just to be a little glimpse of my personal reasons. There's much that we could all sit down and discuss politically, other things. But at the end of the day, I have to make a decision for myself. And that's what I'm deciding to do. No one else has kind of made me do it. I hope they're not too loud for you. But I do love to see them. They are cute, aren't they? At least temporarily. So anyway, so my point one is really health. Physical and mental health and well-being. So as a teacher, I've heard this said a lot in different schools. Oh, we are looking out for the well-being of our children. Of course, that's intrinsic to the job, but also for our teachers. Well-being of teachers, and not, of course, not just teachers, but I'm speaking from my own personal experience, but people generally. I'm quite concerned about the well-being of people generally. I have to say, that's my humble take on things right now in England 2025. So I don't have any major, I don't know if I have any, thank God, physical problems, but I have seen a few things trying to creep their way in, and I believe that it's partly to do with getting older, but it's partly to do with where I'm living. And I really think that our environment that we choose, for the most part, it can have a really positive effect, or it can have a dire effect. Do we want a toxic environment or a positively good environment? Which is, that word toxic comes up quite a bit in society now, I know. And I'm not saying English life is altogether toxic. There are many good things that you could sit down and talk about. But I think at the end of the day, we have to each make our own decisions, and that's what I'm doing now. So I'm reflecting on, say, like the mental part of this, the mental well-being. This last winter has been long and difficult for me. And so the first winter that I was here was not too bad, actually. I was kind of bracing myself for the cold. I got myself some kind of, few good English coats. I had my boots all lined up in a row, and I was good to go with my gloves and my hat, and off we go. Steffi, English winter #1. So English winter #1 went pretty good because I was still riding on that vitamin D and that memories from Florida sun and the different aspects of living in a sunny environment. So when I had my first winter, it was almost like a novelty, plus the very important fact that I had my mum. So all the time I had my mum here, she was like a major reason why I even came back from Florida. So not to say I regret it in any shape or form, I do not, and I never will. Very happy I did it, but that season has now been completed. And so at the time I had my mum around. I had her coming to my house to visit for tea. I was able to take her out in my car, and lots of other things, ways that we helped her as a family. And it was just lovely to have her up the road after spending like 18 years, 4,500 miles away. So the second winter, it was almost like a different story for me. So I was heading headlong into the second winter, busy at school, working full-time, busy with the heavy demands of full-time teaching job, which is another story right there, the demands of modern teaching in England. So no comment right now, but yeah, I was all ready for it. Well, I thought I was. I wasn't ready for it because, first of all, we had hardly had any sun last year. Anybody living, staying or remembering last summer in the UK, summer 2024, was not very sunny. And so I was trying to keep myself going with the vitamin D, which I do take quite high doses of vitamin D, excuse me, hiccups. But I don't think that it didn't totally supersede the negatives of the very low vitamin D that we had all the way through the winter. So yeah, so vitamin D has been linked to things like arthritis, fatigue, and even depression. So these are very physical things. Now, thank God I haven't had, not that I know about arthritis, I haven't had real defined depression. I haven't had, actually I have had fatigue. Yes, I definitely have had fatigue. So out of those three, the fatigue is how it's hit me badly. And I would say I've seen some scary indications that if I stayed here for winters after winters, that depression could most likely set in. Not that I would sit here and let it. I hope that have the kind of mindset where I don't allow things to come up like that. But I think lots of people agree with me, it has a habit of coming on you for your different life situations. And so I didn't plan even to have any SAD, an SAD, seasonal affective disorder, I believe it stands for. But I did, I definitely had it. I've had it, and I think I'm only just recovering, and it's March with a couple of sunny days. So I'm just seeing all of these indications as physical and mental aspects that I just need to take a warning. Now, do I want to accept those as life in England? Do I want to keep those on this big seesaw that I'm on of thinking of all the good points about England? Do I want to just put up with those, or do I want to go for an improvement in those areas? So in every choice there's going to be some trade-offs, and this is a phrase that I heard from somebody else recently, but it's very true, very true, that any kind of choices, like especially location and life choices like this, we are going to have some trade-offs. So in my case, I'd rather trade off some things that I would miss about England. Hi.
Are you famous for any songs?
Hi.
Hi, are you famous for any songs?
I'm just doing a video about the UK. Yeah.
What country are you from? UK?
Yes, I'm British, but I lived in America for 18 years, so I'm just sharing with some differences that I see.
Are you live?
I'm recording the film, yeah. So I would invite you, but I really need to keep going, but I appreciate your interest. Yeah. I hope you enjoy the area. That's sweet. So that's unusual, I have to say, but I'm glad for the unusual. I'm glad for the spontaneity of some people who will just start talking like that. But you guys might think from an indication from that, then, oh, Steffi, you're just making all of this up. And here's some friendly people. They just literally came up to you. Well, they did, but that's not very usual. I hope that you can just believe me on that. So there we go with the first main point. So yes, I am thinking of myself now. I've thought a great deal about my family, close family. I do have some close family here. I also have a sister who's an expat in the USA. And I also have a son who's an expat somewhere else. So I just see that I need to think about myself much more while still considering them and loving them from a distance, okay? So number two, just to add to number one really, that unfortunately I love to walk if I can have a little bit of sunshine. Just walking along in the rain or the mud or slipping up in puddles isn't my idea of fun. So yeah, sounds a little bit like a moany groany there, but it kind of puts me off. I try and be positive, but it's not very encouraging for walking. So what do you think happens? You end up staying inside, which isn't what I want to do with my life. I love my home, but I don't want to always feel like I need to be in my house because it's too cold, it's too unfriendly, or whatever. So the next point that I would like to share is this environment here, this current environment, and remember, these are my personal opinions based on what I've seen, heard, and actually experienced, and I've given it 2 years now back as a reverse expat or a repat. But I have definitely seen this kind of unpredictable environment, and what I mean by that is, I mean that if I stayed here and then I worked into my retirement and then I was hoping for a steady situation, I can't know that for sure. I can't know for 100% that even my pension's going to be stable. I can't know for sure if I can pay my heating bill. There's quite a lot going on right now, and it saddens me greatly that people like myself who have given it a go back in their home country to see how it worked, these things are not very appealing, they're not very encouraging. So the thought of me sitting in a long winter with no heat, well, minimal heating, let's say minimal heating, struggling to go and buy some nice food at the store because I have to buy, really basic stuff that I can only afford that, etc., etc. That's not how I want to live the rest of my life here on Earth. So I've been giving this a great deal of thought, you can tell. So I do think that the stress level goes up when there's an unpredictability. Some people thrive on that. I would say more younger people actually. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you kind of thrive on that little bit of unknown factor, and what's happening next in the UK. But when you get to my age, and obviously much further on, I'm anticipating down the line that it can only go down. I don't see things going up so much. I just see a gradual pattern downwards, which is not very appealing either. So while I totally get it that talking about, for me anyway, going back to the USA is an option because I'm a citizen, but that's not an option for too many Brits. It is for some. But of course there are other countries, not just the US. I speak a lot about the US because I live there, and I can go to either country, but I have that option. But that's a lot of the reason why I'm going there, because I have an option to go there, and to me it's an extremely valid option. So anybody want to ask any questions about why I think it's a valid option there? Any things I'm not mentioning, I mean, please comment. Anyone? So I do think that, you know, the unpredictability can be an extreme level of stress. Now I know when my mum was still here, she was largely protected from that, because I think she was in, sad to say, but in that last, for now anyway, unless things change, she was in that last part of the English life for older people that was more predictable, with her pension, with her help, her support. But it's going into a different environment now. All right, so together with the unpredictability comes job opportunities. So when I was in Florida, getting ready to move back to the UK, I heard on a number of occasions, including American friends, I think, somebody over there said to me that, oh, you know, they're looking for teachers in England, they've got a lot of teachers leaving. So guess what, when I moved over here, I did obtain a teaching post, thank God, and I worked there for a while. But that doesn't always happen with people coming back into the country, and I know for a fact that it's much more difficult coming from another country into the UK to be even accepted into the teaching profession, which to me is quite shocking, because we have our degrees, we worked hard for those degrees, we've had experience, and so I think you can see where that one could go in that discussion. But I just do see a general kind of job, or lack of job opportunities. A head teacher in my local area once recently said to me, because I talked to him about this observation that I've seen, and he was honest and straightforward enough to admit that they did tend to go for the newly qualified teachers. And of course I'm not going to name that head teacher ever, because he volunteered that information, but that to me is just extremely sad. So, and I believe him. I don't think he's just saying that, because he was trying to explain to me that there are factors in hand that makes it harder for someone like myself to come back into the teaching profession. And it's by no means a personal thing, and it's not really even an experience thing. It's more to do with other aspects, like he mentioned. He actually admitted that he shortlisted and interviewed 12 people for one teaching post. So that shows me something. Okay. All right, so next one, planning for my retirement. So I have watched a few videos on YouTube, very useful ones, extremely useful, and I am really starting to think seriously now about how I want my retirement to look. So it's not just a case of saving a few bucks in the bank, pounds. It's also to do with how is it going to look like 10 years from now, and you're leaving your work and you're leaving your work colleagues behind, and now you're in this sea of extra time, but are you in the place where you really want to be? By that time it might hit you straight up that, oh, you know, you could still do it, but of course, as we know, it gets harder as you get older. Things pull on you emotionally, of course physical things going on, and so on. So I really think that planning for my retirement is a major part of this now, and I don't like to labour that one too much. There is a shout out that I want to do to a really good YouTube channel called what is it, Humble Penny, and I will just list it in my description below. But I really want to recommend them because they have some excellent advice, I think, and helpful tips and information about helping you in your more financial part of moving out of the UK. So he's done an excellent job. I think they're a married couple there, and they presented their information extremely well. And so I just like to, send you there if you ever wanting to find out more. I'd recommend them. Also, while I'm on the subject of recommending, my sister actually started, remember I said she's an expat in the USA, she started her own expat Facebook page, which I really recommend as well. It's called The Best of British Expats Worldwide. So if you would like to look them up, if you are an expat either in the USA, an English British expat, or just here contemplating moving over there or anywhere else really, it might be a useful group to join if you're on Facebook. So just a couple of shout outs there. So next point, lifestyle. Going out to eat over there, I have to say, and it's something I really need to confess, is that sometimes my husband would say, oh, let's just go out, let's go out. And I used to groan. Oh, I just want to be at home and cook my own food. But when I look back, and of course I didn't say that every time. And I certainly enjoy going out for the most part. I'm just saying those times when I did say that, I regret it, because live and learn, and I realise what a blessing it is now to be able to go and have a meal out. It doesn't have to be posh. Someone who I know over there just loves diners, right? And diners used to be a thing that I found hard to enjoy because they were so very Southern American, and I wasn't used to that. Remember, I went through a big transition going from a typical English girl to being Americanized. But in my process of doing that, I did have some reluctance about going to diners, but now I see the novelty of them. So even though they wouldn't be my absolute number one choice going out to eat when I go to the USA, they certainly would be a fascination, and I think I'd enjoy going there. But let's face it, it's so expensive in the UK. There was a restaurant that I went to for my staff Christmas do. Hardly got anything for our money, and it was almost like £30 for a very small meal, a mediocre level of food. And I need to say all this because it's true. I'm in the reality business, not here to complain about individuals or restaurants or people, but it's a general picture. But sometimes you can grab a really good pub lunch and it's excellent. I would always miss the lovely English roasts that I've had here in different pubs or whatever. Those are definitely the trade-offs that I'd have to just let go. So really, pub roast dinners, fish and chips, things like that, definitely. You can't really replace those in the USA, but I have to say the Americans are pretty good at finding ideas and revamping them and producing them. So maybe someone could work on that and doing a really good roast dinner in Florida. That would be so neat. But lifestyle, of course, going to the beach would definitely be an option if I'm in Florida. But if you're not if you're on the mainland, like a dear friend of mine in Missouri, or different friends that I have in Kansas, those types of inward areas, of course I would miss the beach if I was personally there, but I'm not choosing to go there. I'm choosing to go to a beach area because that's what I particularly enjoy and get great pleasure from, is going to the beach. So my choice, isn't it, really? Hopefully. Hopefully, my close family here in England will totally understand why I'm doing this. So I do have to mention the F word. No, not that one. I want to mention the word friendly, because I still feel here that for the most part it's extremely unfriendly country. So anyone, if you want to shout at me and correct me on that, go ahead. I'd love to hear a contrary opinion on that. But I think we pretty much know what I'm saying there. So I find it a bit of a drag because I lived in America for a while and I enjoyed that openness. I enjoyed that you don't have to talk to everybody and not everyone talks to you, but there's a lot more fluidity over there. There's a lot more hey, how are you doing, and then you just go on, you know. But that little bit of communication, that little bit of friendliness does go a long way, goes a long way. All right, so just to wrap up today, I recently did a video on moving forward after grief, and so I just want to wrap up with moving forward for myself in my life. I want to see this, and I do see it, as a very positive thing. Because I think that moving in when you're over 50 and going into 60s and 70s, it's a big deal. It really is a big deal, and you would definitely need some kind of help. Especially if you're widowed or not married. Well, I would say most likely you would need help. But yeah, I would say the moving for me has more positives than negatives. Overall, I've looked at it very carefully, almost like an accountant level, looking at the figures, to's and fro's, pros and cons, tick those boxes. And I think that moving forward would be good for me mentally, physically, definitely. I want to keep my health. I want to keep this going. I don't want to just say, okay, I'm back in England now and I'll just wait for my pension now and I'll just wait for, you know, this or that. I don't want to have that kind of mindset. So I urge you to just consider the things, if you are really thinking of this yourself, which my guess is you might be if you're clicked on the video, or you might just be fascinated or interested or thoroughly bored by this time, I don't know. But either way, thanks for watching to the end. I appreciate that. And again, thanks for all my dear subscribers. I really appreciate every one of you, and I will look forward to talking with you next time. Anything you want to ask or mention about, I'll be very glad to hear from you. All right, so I hope you've enjoyed the lovely environment here again today. Now, very unexpected visitors coming by, but it sure was nice to be with you today. Bye for now.